Hi and welcome back to CSM Mistakes Were Made. I'm Anita. In today's video, I want to show you a few things that I learned about knee socks that I want to share. Um, I have to back up and say that I fell in love with some yarn when I was at an Erlbacher Crank-In a couple years ago, and it was just so beautifully dyed and so rich and so saturated. The colors were just outstanding. So I went and bought myself a cone of it, and I have what's left of it here. This is the first cone of the yarn I bought, and it's an Earth product, URTH, Earth yarn product that Erlbacher had specifically made for them, for Erlbacher customers, so that we can crank knee socks, several pairs of knee socks, obviously, out of this. I think these are 1 pound cones. So I got this, and I'm embarrassed to say how long it stood on my shelf before I got brave enough to try to make a pair of knee socks. So I wanted to share my experience. I think if you know anything about this yarn and the clever ways that Earth chooses to line up their stripes, you'll kind of be maybe a little intimidated too. So let me give you an example. With this, I think it's called Uneek, Uneek line of product. So Earth Yarns, they make a lot of different textiles, I think, and sock yarn is just one thing they do. I think the yarn is made in Turkey. I'm not sure. The thing about this yarn is it is unique in that there are no repeat colors in an entire sock. So I like to make matchy socks. So it was a challenge for me to try to find for a second sock where I can try to match. This is the pair of socks that I show in the video. Another pair that I'm really proud of too, this is a different colorway. My daughter chose this one, and I think it's just super cute. Now these have been washed and blocked, and they are just so soft and luscious. In the description of this video, you'll find a pattern. It's 2 pages. You can print it out. A 2-page pattern where I share some links you can actually go to see examples of this yarn. And I've linked to the Erlbacher knitting company website, where I think they still can take orders for this yarn if you want it. So we start this sock with a nice cast on edge, which is called a 2-row hung hem. And I show how I do it in the video. It's not very hard to do. I follow that with swapping out some needles for a 2x2 pattern of ribbing, and I did that for 30 rows. I kept the loose tension all the way down through here, and then I started gradually, incrementally increasing the tension until I got to approximately here, and it's all in the directions. And I did about 30 rows of pre-heel, essentially. Conventional heel, and then depending on the foot length, 60 to 75 rows in a conventional toe. You have to maybe consider doing a gauge swatch. Ugh, those are horrid words to tell somebody who wants to just get knitting, but it does help find the pattern repeat if there is one. And I ended up showing how I did that on the second sock, so I could find where I needed to start that. The top of the second sock. The socks each weigh under 50 grams, which is surprising to me. So each knee sock weighs 45 to 46 grams, which it's unusual for such a long sock. For the pretty ones with orange here, I did have to wind off about this much in order to get the same repeat for the top of the second sock. So I did want to mention that the pattern I've written could actually be scaled up to a longer sock, maybe with a fold over cuff, because I had a fair amount of yarn left over, so you can use that as your guide. So let's get started. Thanks. So this is the beautiful cone of yarn from Earth Yarn in the Uneek line. contains a pound of yarn on this one cone, and you're supposed to get about 4 matching sets of knee socks. So that's what I'm dealing with. Now, I've already cranked one. This is the first sock off of that cone. So it starts off with this beautiful dark set of stripes, and then it morphs into even more beautiful, very saturated colored stripes. And now we're down into the heel area and finally the foot. So we're starting with the premise that the yarn that's coming off of here sort of ended in this kind of colorway, which, if I'm trying to make a match, doesn't really bear too much of a resemblance to the top of this sock. So if I want to make a matching set of socks with this, it is hand-dyed yarn, so I accept that I may not be able to get good match. But what I thought I would do is just crank a swatch. And so I'll put a little tail in here, and I thought I would just crank to see what it looks like. And I'm hoping, of course, that at some point very quickly I'll get this pattern to start again, but we'll see. So this is quite a lot of knitting, but I think I have gotten into this area. What I think I need to do is determine which stripe really matches best to, again, try to get a fairly matchy set of socks. So I think I'm going to try to crank down to where this beautiful turquoise color comes in. All right, so I think we have just entered a little bit of this very early on turquoise or teal color. Now we're definitely into that teal color right here. Okay, so we'll crank it off the machine. To crank off the machine, most people know, you just remove it from the yarn carrier. And we'll do that. So I'll bring it up through the machine, including and we'll take a look and see what we've got here. I'm pleasantly surprised that I think I can get a second sock after I wind off some of this yarn that won't be needed. I'm going to try to get my second sock to match this first sock, and I'm going to try to see what matches, what lines up here. Okay, so I think I've got an idea. The first part of this sock started about right here. Then it went to dark blue, and then more royal blue, royal, navy. And the transition to the tealish stuff happened down in through here. So I'm going to cut the yarn about right here. I'll come back after I've got this yarn rewound onto the cone, and we'll crank the sock. My machine is set up, and I wanted to show from this angle the settings I've selected for the beginning of some knee socks. Basically, what I'm doing on this 60 slot cylinder is setting my tension to a fairly loose tension, which is screwing the knob so that this little indicator goes down pretty far. And on my machine, it's just about at the halfway point, which is about the loosest tension I'd want to knit at with fingering weight yarn. So I'm pointing this out only to show how I will be at a certain point after I do the cuff and about 40 or 50 rows of the leg. I'm going to be tightening this down by using this knob, and it might not be so easy to see at the time. All right, I'm going to take my yarn, which is this gorgeous earth yarn, and I'm going to put it through my yarn tupper and in the yarn carrier to begin just on this side of needle number 1. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail, and I have been sort of an advocate on hung hems of weaving this tail in on the second on the first part of the second row, but I'm not going to do that this time. Let me show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start this project with a selvage that's known as a 2-row hung hem. And I will start by cranking first 1 row. And again, like I said, when it's a hung hem of 20 rows or something, I usually knit this in on the second row, but I'm not going to do that. I find it complicates things a little bit. So I'm just going to leave this little tail hanging out, and then I'll weave it down one of the purl rows on the inside of the leg. All right, so we have done 2, let's just say 1 4/5 of a row, so that now we have 2 loops just under the needles. And the first loop that we come to is the one we want to hang onto the needles. And so we will do that right now. The 2-row hung hem, if you're not familiar with it, is a really good selvage. Every sock needs an edge that won't unravel, and this is a good one. This 2-row hung hem I selected on the basis of the fact that I will be wanting to do a pattern of ribbing for the cuff that is 2 by 2. And most of the time when I do cruise socks, for instance, I do Wana selvage, which is a 1 by 1 pattern that is automatically locked just by virtue of the fact that it's 1 by 1. When you branch out from other ribbing patterns from 1 by 1, you have to figure in a way to lock the stitches so that they don't unravel. This is one way. It's a very good way. And so from this 2-row hung hem, you can do any pattern you want. 3 by 2, well, it depends on the mathematics of your cylinder, but you could do 2 by 3 or 4 by 2 or all right, so now I hang my weights, and I'm going to crank now just 3/4 of the way around so that I can now place my ribber in, and we'll get that done. Okay. Now it's a process of transferring every 3rd and 4th stitch from cylinder needles to ribber needles. And I don't really need to lift these, but I'm just showing, for the purposes of showing you which ones will become ribber needles. The ones that are elevated now will become ribber needles. And you can slip your ribber needle in its slot and then move your stitches. I suspect people may just do a handshake trade and then slip the ribber needle in that way. But whatever way you do it, whatever works. So I'll do the first few of these in this fashion. That's kind of how I've been doing it. It looks like that needle was already in there. Oh, I've got a couple needles that were in here. So I had to actually undo this project because I had dropped too many ribber stitches. So I took the ribber off, and now I'm seeing it's like finding a dollar bill in your pocket. You've got I've got some of these slots already filled. That's kind of cool, as long as they're lined up properly. Okay, so I probably will now start transferring stitches because it gets hard to see. And you have to move the whole thing so you can actually see and get to the rest of the ribber. All right, so now the little bit of a laborious process of getting these carefully out of their cylinder slots and carefully moving that stitch to the ribber needle. And there is a little bit of a satisfying pop when you get it right. And it may help to avoid dropping a stitch if you kind of coax the needle this way toward the center of the cylinder. I have dropped my share of these stitches while I'm transferring, so I always try to avoid it, but it is hard. It is hard. I have been lucky, I will say, that maybe because there's just not much bulk yet. It's just early in the project. But if I do drop one of these on this transferring maneuver, it doesn't seem to get too far away from me, so I can usually snag it, get it back up onto the needle. And I don't really want to show you that because I don't really like to drop stitches. So, but if it were to happen, I feel like I'm very lucky that I can often, I'd say 100% of the time on these knee socks, I've been able to kind of dig it out right before it goes into the cylinder, never to be seen again, in which case I'd have to start over. Now I've done roughly almost a half. I'm going to crank forward to open up more of these and then to be able to swap them out more easily. There, we did it. Okay, so we put the spring back on and we are off to the races, I think. Let's hope we have no stitch dropping. So I'm going to try to get 30 rows of 2x2 ribbing. I'm at 27, here's 28, here's 29, and then we'll stop at 30 at 6 o'clock, right here. All right, for the next part, we're going to crank loosely another 50 rows in this, again, very loose tension that I started this project off with. So we're going to get these swapped out to do stockinette. We'll be able to remove the ribber assembly, and it's after the 50 rows of kind of loose stockinette under the cuff that we'll start doing our tension increases. done that, let's put our spring back and we can do a big reveal. And let's just take a look. Very dark yarn. I'm not sure how this is displaying for everybody, but it looks very good. I feel really good about this first part of the cuff. Now I will crank from 30 to 80, which is 50 rows. $78, $79, $80. Stopping at 5-ish. Here's 6, so about 5-ish. The reason I want to stop at 6 is nothing to do with needle manipulation or swapping anything out or putting a ribber in. 6 o'clock is a very handy place to stop, but in this case, 6 turns out to be a very handy place for changing out changing the tension settings. So as we said at the beginning of the video, and I might as well show it here. At the beginning of the video, I shared that we're cranking this first part of the sock at a very loose tension. That's what we just did with this second sock. I cranked 30 rows of 2x2 ribbing for the cuff. We've just done about 50 rows of the upper calf. Now I'm going to start tightening down in this area here. You may be able to even see that it's becoming a little bit more narrow to the ankle, where we'll start a heel and then crank a foot and then a toe. So I think this is for me, and maybe just because it's it's machine dependent and leg shape dependent. For me, this would be a tricky place because you may need to modify it for a variety of reasons, like I said, including your machine or the shape of the person's calf that you want to fit with knee socks. For my purposes, I came up with this recipe, so to speak, based on the fact that my daughter has a pretty conventional calf with a need for smaller and smaller diameter at the ankle and then a foot. We are at 80, and what I'm going to do from here is do 45 rows to bring us to 125 rows, 45 rows where I'm incrementally tightening 1 quarter turn each time. So to tighten from where it is now, from 2, I need to go to 3. From 2 to 3, that's not much, is it? I'm going to crank 5 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you should be able to see that the space between these stitches is going to be getting smaller and smaller. All right, so now I go from 3 to 4 and crank 5 rows. 1, 4, 5. 4 to 1, because we're starting that series over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 to 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 to 3 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 to 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then back to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm at 115 rows. I need to do these increases 2 more times. But I'm now seeing very small spaces between. I've really constricted the tension down by doing this gradually. So I need to go from 1 to 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then from 2 to 3. It's at this point that my gauge here, as crude as it is back in the early part of the 20th century, this is what they had to work with. So my gauge has been coming up gradually. And this is all to say that just by cranking on this machine for 3 years now, I know that when I'm right there with that, where that point is, and right at 3, I'm at about the extreme of the tension I can get with this machine. Okay, so I need to crank 5 more rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yes, the stitches are tight. I'm used to kind of testing my machine in this way, but it may not be for everybody to crank at this tension. You have to decide what's right for you. But I like a tight tension fabric. I don't like coarse fabric. I think pearl bumps are inherently uncomfortable when it's a loose fabric. So when you're walking on these, it doesn't feel good. I like to get a tight tension. I'm now prepared for a heel to do. Here are my halfway marks. I've added 2 more needles in work. I'll put the heel spring on and we'll crank a heel. Lower all of the needles, start my counter over, and I take the heel spring off for the foot. I need to do 66 foot rows. So I'm at 60. 4, 5, and I'm going to stop at 66. But on my machine, the action of my counter is somewhere in here. So I will get to 66, but shortly after I get to 66, I'm stopping at 12. So here we go. 66. We put the heel spring on, we crank, and we lift a needle. Now I'm going to lower the left one and the right one together because I'm going to do one more pass, grabbing that one and then grabbing that one, and it's always a relief to get through that so that you can cut your yarn, which I'll do right there. Cut the yarn, bring it out of the yarn carrier around to the inside of the cylinder. And now we'll get our yarn carrier over to 3 o'clock position and crank in some waste yarn. I just happen to have a nice little bundle of it right here. and take a quick look to see what we've got in terms of comparison with the first sock. Here is sock number 1. And let's just see how we did with this one. This one, of course, has the 2-row hung hem cast on, 30 rows of 2x2 ribbing and a very loose tension. And the loose tension is done another 50 or so rows until about, I would say, probably about right here where we start tightening it one click at a time, so to speak. Clicks are very taken for granted by Erlbacher users, but our old Ligari machines don't actually click. We turn incrementally, tightening, tightening, tightening to the tightest tension into this pre-heel area, and then we turn a heel. Now, I think that's pretty good. It's very gratifying to get a match. Now, have I gotten a decent match for the foot? Well, I'm going to say not really. Not really. I think the stripes line up, but the contents of the yarn, the dye of the yarn, especially maybe here you can see it really well, they don't match. I'm okay with that. This is hand-dyed yarn, and it's very unrealistic to expect a perfect match. But I'm very happy with this set of socks. I'll Kitchener them and show you the outcome.